Please be seated. Good afternoon. And you will be continued to be referred to as juror I-19. And the attorneys are going to have an opportunity to ask you questions about the questionnaire you filled out a week ago Tuesday, okay? All right, take a deep breath. And Mr. De La Ronda will begin. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
As Judge Nelson stated, we're going to be asking you some questions about what you know or don't know in terms of from the media, okay? And the big thing is, since we're in a courtroom and there's a court reporter right in front of you, that you need to answer yes or no, because I can tell by you nodding your head, you're saying yes, but you understand? We're all used to talking by nodding our heads or shaking our heads. We had an opportunity to read the questionnaire you put on here. I heard about the news about Trayvon Martin being shot by a man on Neighborhood Watch.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. I-19, I'm sorry. Well, tell me what you remember hearing about the case.
I just know bare minimum about the case. I don't watch the news. What I heard from or about the case is what I've heard from my mother, who watches the news. I don't.
Okay. I'm sorry, you put down Zimmerman potentially killed Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that from your mother?
Yes.
Okay. What else did she tell you other than that?
Nothing.
Okay. Tell me what you can, was it at the time it happened or was it more recently?
Once it happened, that's when I heard about it.
Okay. And you lived with your mother?
Yes.
Okay. Did she tell you anything else related to the case?
No.
When you say potentially, when you use the word potentially, when you wrote it down, what does that mean?
Allegedly, I don't.
Okay. You don't know?
I don't know.
Okay. And did your mother use the word potentially, or is that just your word when you're paraphrasing what your mother
Just
said?
paraphrasing.
Okay. So I gather you do not watch the news at all?
No.
Do you remember looking at any photographs at any time, or your mother telling you about photographs?
I remember seeing some photos of Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman on the news, like as I was passing by, but
sure.
I'm not watching it.
What do you remember the photos of Mr. Zimmerman looking like?
I guess just the mugshot, I guess, that
Okay.
one.
When you say mugshot, what do you mean by that?
It was him looking in the camera, just frowning.
I'm
That
sorry.
one. The one that's used on the news everywhere.
Okay. All right. And how about any other photographs of Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
How about of Trayvon Martin?
I've seen just like various pictures of him. Like saw one with him with a hat and like a peace sign, I guess, and then a couple others, but
Okay.
I can't really remember.
Do you remember your mother telling you anything related to the case, like what was
No.
happening in court, or you remember either hearing from your mother or anybody else, or
No.
just when you walked by by your mother while she was watching TV, anything about the case, like whether there's any recordings or videos or
No.
anything that happened in court at all?
No.
Are you one of those individuals that just doesn't,
I
you
have
got too
no
much going on?
Yeah, I have no interest in watching the news.
Okay. If somebody were to come out of town, from out of town, and you weren't a juror, and it was a good friend of yours and said, I've been out of town, I've been in, Australia,
Mhm.
okay? And they just got back into town. I said, what is this all about? What would you tell them?
I wouldn't really have anything to say. I would just say what was on my questionnaire. Like, I just know this much and that's it.
Okay. You got the summons, right, about a month ago, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Did you do any research about what potentially was going on?
No.
You had no interest in that?
I had no interest.
Okay. You excited about being here?
No.
Okay. I guess this is your first time, right?
It is.
Okay. What I'm trying to do as best I can,
Yeah.
try to find out what you may have been exposed to.
I
So
understand.
we can kind of talk about it, and the bottom line, you have stated in your questionnaire that you have not formed an opinion as to
Can't form
the
an
guilt
opinion.
or innocence of Mr. Zimmerman because you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Can you agree to listen to what the evidence happens in the courtroom
I
and make a
can.
decision about that?
Mhm.
Okay, now how about at work? Anybody at work talk about the case? And don't tell us where you work because I've got it here, we all know.
I don't want to repeat it either. My boss is extremely interested in the case, but I usually walk away whenever I'm around her.
Okay,
She thinks it's very interesting.
sure. And what I'm talking about is prior to you getting the summons.
Oh, no. No. Mm-mm.
Any talk by your boss about what was going on?
Mm-mm. No.
Even like, okay, this is what happened today, or this case is about, you know, whatever.
No.
Okay. Now, we realize that when we ask, oh, let me go on the internet. You don't do any Facebook or any of that stuff?
I mean, I have a Facebook, but I don't research the case.
Okay. I don't have Facebook, so I'm talking out of ignorance, but my kids and wife do. Apparently you can, on Facebook, there's like a drop down, you're able to get news or something. Is that true or not? No?
When I don't watch the news, I don't read the news, I don't.
No,
I know, I don't.
On Facebook, or is there like a drop down or some kind of thing where you can kind of look at the news?
I'm sure there is.
But you've never done it?
No.
How about on YouTube or other kind of social media where people comment about the case or not? Have you ever run across anything related to the case?
I probably run across a couple of stuff, but I don't stop to read it. I just
Okay.
kind of keep going.
Okay. And why is it that you don't stop to read it?
I don't have any
Okay.
care about it.
Okay. Back last year when it happened, February, did you hear at all about it last year?
I heard about it, but
Okay.
I never just stopped, sat down,
Right.
like watched the full story.
Sure. What do you remember hearing about it when it first happened?
I honestly can't remember.
Okay. And when you heard about it, was that from just walking by your parents' mom as she was watching TV, or is that just from your mother telling you, oh, there's a case here, that's interesting?
Probably from her, and then as I was walking past the TV, if it was on the news, I
Sure.
would vaguely hear about it, but
Okay. Do you remember anything else in terms of what was going on in the community around, whether there was any talk by anybody out there other than what was on TV? In other words, you remember?
I remember hearing about like memorial services for Trayvon, but other than that, that's.
Okay. Anything else that you remember? How about recently? Anything in the news recently? Did your mother tell you, yeah? Besides telling her, besides, I'm assuming telling you got jury duty. Anything else prior to that
No.
that she told you, like, this is what's been happening in court, anything like that?
No.
Okay. And we realize that when you ask jurors to serve as jurors, that it's an inconvenience, you know, a hardship. And that's the only way our system, as you know, works. You know, we ask people to make a sacrifice.
Right.
And the court is, well, first of all, both sides have estimated that once a jury is picked, it should take about 2 to 4 weeks to try the case. And since the court wants to make sure that there's no exposure from the jurors, from the media, that the jury will be sequestered. So your contact with family stuff is severely limited.
Right.
On purpose. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
And that would not be a hardship to you, as I understand it, correct?
Talking to people won't be a hardship. It's just I have to work. I'm not getting paid to be here, so that's the only hardship that I have.
And we realize we've had that problem with people before.
Right.
And we realize it's a hardship.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess the question is only you can answer is it going to be, I don't mean to get personal, but do you live with your mother or with parents? Or?
I live with my mother, yes.
Okay, all right. And we've already had other jurors express that it is a hardship for them. The question is whether it's just going to be insurmountable. Do you understand?
Yes.
You think it will be?
It's just like, since I get paid hourly and like a low hourly, if it's like every day like this, I don't know how I'm gonna pay the bills at the end of the month if I'm just continuously here. She doesn't help me just because I live with her doesn't mean she helps me. So that's the only concern I have.
No, and we realize that we've had other people, you know, had all kinds of hardships okay, give me a moment, Your Honor. Good. You mentioned your boss at some point said something to you about the case?
No, she just says that she's jealous because she would rather be here.
Oh, she wants to be a juror.
She wants to be here.
Okay.
She thinks it's very interesting, but other than that, once she starts I see that she's getting too excited about it and wants to start talking about it, I walk away.
Did she kind of verbalize or indicate an opinion one way or the other?
No, she just says she really would
Is she
rather
one of those
be.
people that just loves these kind of stuff?
Her and her girlfriend, like, always, like, they go out of their way to be a part of jury. Like,
You talking about like they watch the shows, or they just kind of?
they watch the shows, but then they try to be a part of, like, jury duty. Like, I know she said that her girlfriend had done something so she would have the opportunity to be picked more frequently than everybody else.
Like, I guess it's some way of volunteering more often or
I
something.
get
I
it.
don't-
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you can think of that she told you? Did she ever express an opinion like, Mr. Zimmerman's guilty or?
I think she said it
innocent?
could go either way. She never really gave her opinion. She just,
Okay. Anybody else that you can think of that may have mentioned to you their feelings about the case one way or the other?
no.
Anything else you can think of that we should know in terms of your exposure to the media? Or I guess you haven't formed an opinion.
I haven't
correct?
formed an opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. West.
I'm sorry, may I have one follow-up question? I apologize. Have you checked at all in terms of when you say a hardship, a potential hardship at work, with your boss at all in terms of whether accommodations can be made?
Well, I switched shifts for today. Like, I can do that, but want to get as many hours
Right,
as I
right,
can.
no, because a lot of times employers, since they realize, the civic responsibility of people and also the employers themselves, they make accommodations that you check to see whether they would in some
I can
way-
ask her, but I don't know if that's really going to
Yeah,
happen.
sometimes you gotta go to even to a higher boss in terms of finding out. I'm not saying.
I can ask the owner of my
Alright.
job, yeah.
So you haven't asked the owner in terms of whether they.
I don't communicate with him.
I'm sorry?
I don't communicate with him.
Okay. Or you can ask the manager to ask the owner, I guess?
I
or-
can.
Okay. And just in my experience, a lot of times, most companies or most places where people work can try to make accommodations because they realize they have a civic responsibility too.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West.
One second. Sorry, one second.
That's fine.
Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath now. Let's, first of all, just some general overview of what we're doing here. I know you've already missed several days of work, I take it, because of this.
Well, yesterday was my day off, but unfortunately the other 3 days that I've been here, it was during work, but I was at least able to make one of my work shifts last time. So I've only missed like 2 days of work because I've been able to move stuff around, but I don't know how long that's going to be able to continue on.
Would you have to work, if you were here during, well, let me get back to that in a different way. So now you've missed 2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
And you only get paid by the hour?
Yes.
You don't get paid anything if you don't go to work?
Right.
You seem a little stressed.
No,
That's-
I'm cold, I'm sorry.
Tell me though about the financial aspect. What happens to you if you miss several days, weeks, or perhaps as much as a month of work?
Well, I owe a certain amount of money, obviously, every month throughout my bills, and I don't get any help really. And I mean, even if it's like 2 to 4 weeks, I could try to get help, but it's not really, I'm the only one who can pay it, and if I miss anything, then I'm not going to be able to get any money. At least this pay period.
I'm sorry.
At least like per pay period, because I
Right.
get paid every 2 weeks.
You wouldn't be able to work at all if you were on the jury. It's not like you could pick up an extra shift or
Yeah.
anything. So when we talk about 2 to 4 weeks, we're
Yeah.
talking about after the trial itself starts. That's where the 2 to 4 weeks begins.
Right.
That doesn't include any of the time that you've already spent or that you might miss the rest of this week.
Right.
Okay. So are you worried that if you missed a
Very much
month-
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't really have anybody that can cover your bills for you while you're gone?
No.
Would that create some stress for you?
A little bit, but I mean, I would try to work it out. I could ask my family, and I could, again, ask my company to see if there's anything that they would be able to do to help me.
Mm-hmm. Have you asked them yet?
I only asked if I would get paid to be here, and they said no, and I haven't really ventured to ask them any further.
Okay, when you asked them if you'd be paid to be here, did they tell you?
They told me no.
What do you think might be different than that if you asked them again?
I mean, I don't really know. I would have to ask, again, the owner of the company to see if he would be able to do anything, because it would be up to him.
Okay, and you haven't done that yet?
No.
When you asked them about it, whether you would be paid for being on the jury, their initial reaction was no?
Yeah, I just asked her. I asked my boss through a text message, and she just said no, that we don't do that.
Okay. If you found yourself in a position of not being able to work for a month
Mm-hmm.
and not being paid by work, what kind of hardship would that be for you?
It would be an extreme one, because I wouldn't be able to pay anything. So.
Do you have recurring bills that you're expected to pay each month?
Yes.
If you lost a month's worth of income, would that put you sort of in a very dire situation financially?
It would be very tight, and it would be very unfortunate. So I would have to see what I would have to do. Like, if I went home tonight and I tried to ask and see where I could get finances from, but I haven't prepared that far.
Okay. Let me just explore a little bit of that with you. Do you think you might be able to? Are you optimistic that maybe your mother could cover your bills?
I don't think that she would really be able to, because, I mean, she doesn't ask me to pay rent or anything of the bills, because she knows I couldn't afford anything further than what I have to pay, and for her to cover herself, mine, my brother's, it would just, I don't think she'd be able to pay all of it.
Yeah. So what are you thinking in terms of making arrangements? Do you have other family or friends that would pay your expenses for you, do you think?
I mean, I could probably ask my grandparents, but again, they're both retired, so whatever money comes from them would be little.
You're not sure they would have the resources
Right.
to pay their bills and yours too?
Right.
At this point, you haven't tried yet to see?
Right.
Okay. Anything else come to mind? And I'm not trying to get a firm commitment, but we
No, I
have to
understand.
explore this possibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So at this point, is it fair to say that you couldn't do this on your own?
Right.
And you don't know at this point whether you could get any help from anybody?
Right.
When do you think you would know?
Probably by tomorrow. I only have to ask a couple people to see what they would say.
Okay. Let me talk about some other stuff.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your
No problem.
candor. I'm sure that's not comfortable to just talk
It's
about.
fine.
So, this part of the jury selection process is pretty narrow.
Mhm.
It's limited to hardship issues, financial or otherwise.
Right.
And then what people know about the case already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in some cases, people have never heard of it.
Right.
And then in other cases, it seems like everybody's heard at least something.
Right.
So you fit in that category of having heard at least something.
Right.
And now we're trying to figure out how much,
Mhm.
what, if any, effect it may have had, and what, how that might impact if on your possibility as a juror.
Right.
Following along so far?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, do you consciously avoid listening to the news?
Yes.
Okay. Some people have said it's too depressing.
Well, I just have other things I'd rather be focusing on than sad news, so.
So if you have free time,
No,
you
I
don't
don't.
pick up a newspaper?
No.
Or turn on one of the cable news stations?
No.
Do you have cable TV at home?
I do.
Do you know if you have Channel 13?
I
The
do.
Bright House channel?
Yes.
Have you ever watched that station ever?
No.
So you wouldn't even have had a passing moment connected with this case and Channel 13?
Not really, no.
Okay. Do you use the internet to look for headlines or anything that might connect you with current events?
No.
I think you said you have a brother. Do you have other brothers and sisters?
No, just one.
Do you and he talk about current events at all?
No.
Is he older or younger?
Younger.
But how old is he?
He's 16.
When this case started,
Mhm.
him being 16, for example, would he have mentioned anything to you
No.
about a young man being shot and killed?
No.
When your mother mentioned it to you,
Mhm.
did she say anything, hey, that kid was about your brother's age?
No.
When she said to you, this is a story that's in the news, did she say how the incident happened? And I don't mean details, but where were these guys when this happened, or what's generally thought may have taken place?
She didn't say anything about where. She just said that a boy was shot, and not much more than that.
Mhm. Did she use any names?
I don't think she used names. I know about the names because I have heard about it. You can't help but hear about it sometimes.
Mhm. Did you know anything at all about it when she mentioned it to you?
No.
Do you know what made it newsworthy to her?
No.
It's a sad fact of life that people get killed
Yes.
and people get shot and killed.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if, under all sorts of circumstances, would you agree with that?
Yes.
The fact that somebody was shot and killed in and of itself doesn't necessarily make it significant.
Objection, I'm asking for her knowledge of the media that he's now testifying.
Okay, can you tie it up to media? Thank you.
Yes. Do you agree with that generally?
Generally, yes.
Okay, so that's what I'm wondering about with your mother. Do you have any idea why she thought this particular story was important to herself or important for you to know about?
She could have been just commenting about it to me because it was such a big deal in the news. Maybe she just felt the need to share it, pass it on.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm wondering. Do you know why she thought it was a big deal?
I don't.
Did she ever say there's a community reaction to
No.
this? No discussion whatsoever about that?
No.
Do you have any idea whether there was a community reaction at some point to these events?
I heard that there was a community reaction, but
Mhm.
that's as far as I know about that.
Okay. What did you hear about the community reaction?
I heard that they had gone through like links to go, like some people had issued walks in like honor of the deceased, stuff like that, but other than that, nothing much more.
Okay. This process is sort of trying to mine some information. There's no right or wrong answers.
Right.
And we all know from having done this for well over a week that sometimes we say something that triggers a memory.
Right.
So we have to rely on you just to tell us whatever memories you have and from whatever perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong about knowing of the case.
Okay.
In fact, some people say you'd have to live under a rock to have ever heard about it.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk for a moment, if we might, about the, did you say memorial service, or were you talking about a community reaction at a march or a walk of some sort?
The march and the walk, like I heard that they were honoring the deceased or.
Okay, tell me just a little bit more, if you know, when you
There's-
say they were honoring the deceased.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Everyone who lived in the community or whoever supported that side, or I don't know much more than that.
Did you get a sense that this was a big deal in some way?
Since it's still going on, I guess so, but
Mhm.
other than that,
Did you know anything about where the walks or marches took place?
no,
Do you know if there were any here
no,
in Sanford?
no.
Do you know if any of them took place outside the area?
I would assume that they would take place somewhere, but I don't know where.
Okay. How about why the marches or walks took place? Do you have any sense of why or how that happened?
Well, I would assume that they, took that side, that particular side,
Mhm. And what do you mean by taking a side? What's your sense of the division, that there's one side or the other?
they probably, like, diehard, like, think he did it, and they were trying to honor Trayvon Martin versus just honoring the deceased or something like that.
Do you have any idea why there would have been so much activity and so much organization if it was just to honor the deceased?
No.
Did your mom ever mention anything to you after that first conversation that pointed out the idea that there's marches, or
No.
how about after it got underway? Did you ever talk to your brother about it?
No. He has probably even less interest in the news than I do.
Uh-huh. How about the idea that whatever happened right here in this community, as opposed to what you might hear in the news in some other state or some other country? Did that mean anything to you?
No.
Have you ever had any conversations about the case at any social organizations or church or anything like that?
No.
How about at work? Did I understand that the person you're talking about that kind of wants to get on a jury is someone you work with?
Yes, she's my boss. She's the operations manager of the store.
You'd probably like to trade places with her right now. I suspect.
I really would.
You told her that you had a summons for this case?
Yeah.
When you first got the summons,
Mhm.
did you have any idea that it was possibly for this case?
No, my mom did though, because she said she heard on the news that there was a lot of summons that went out and that
Oh.
it was for this case in particular.
Uh-huh. And what did she say about that?
She didn't like it because she knew I'd be missing work.
Uh-huh. Did that prompt her to make any more comments about the case?
No.
To you? Did you say to her, for example, wow, I don't know anything about this. What's the big deal?
She
Or-
knows that I don't know anything about it because she knows that I don't watch the news.
Right. That's why I'm interested that once she connected the dots and said, hey, this might be on the Zimmerman case,
Mm-hmm.
and you might be a possible juror on it, she would have known that you didn't know anything about it.
Right.
Would she have said to you, or would you have said to her, well, what's the Zimmerman case? What are we talking about here? Why is it a big deal?
I mean, I've heard of the case, but
Mhm.
I never really cared too much to read anything about it. And even once she told me and she connected dots, I still did not care enough to go out and research anything about this case.
Sure. No, I think that's a smart thing to do. In fact, now you're under court order not to do it.
Yeah.
But when you were having this conversation with your mother, did she say anything? Well, Zimmerman case is that one involving that kid that was shot, and you remember.
Yeah. No.
None of that.
Because she probably knows that I know like bare minimum about the case, but she's just trying to help me, or she wants me to get out of this.
So your mother doesn't want you to serve.
No.
It may make her a little less interested in financing it then.
she just does not want me to be here because she knows that she can't help pay all of it, and she knows that if I'm here, I won't be able to pay my bills. She's already trying to get me to quit my job and get a higher paying one as it is.
Yeah. So in terms of the people to ask that are
Mhm.
likely to be able to help you pay your bills if you're on the jury, you've pretty well excluded your mother as a possibility.
She'd be able to pay like some of it, but she wouldn't be able to pay all of it.
And do you think she would even be willing?
She would have to get over it if it comes time for it, but she's not going to be happy about it.
Well, if you went home and you asked her, hey, Mom, I might be on this jury and it might be for a month. And I know you don't want me to be on the jury anyway, but if I am, would you pay my bills for the next month? What do you think her answer would be?
Not good.
Okay. But you're willing to give it a shot?
I'm willing to give it a shot.
When you first heard this and you knew about the case, you knew apparently about a memorial service and such, what was your initial impression?
That's sad that he died, but again, like I don't know him, so it's not like I can really form that much of an emotional attachment to anything regarding this.
Sure. What was your reaction about George Zimmerman as the person who was accused of killing Trayvon Martin?
Someone who killed someone. I didn't go much further beyond facts.
Did you think it might be sad for him if he wasn't guilty?
Sure.
Again, interjecting versus what she knows about.
Okay, sustained.
Did you give any thought, based upon what you heard, how that accusation might impact George Zimmerman?
Well, when I heard about it from the get-go, he was the person who killed someone, and I didn't assume it would go on so long, so I just was like, okay, he's going to jail, and Trayvon's dead, but I didn't really think too much outside of that. I just assumed that it was going to be over and he was going to jail. I didn't actually realize that it was still going on until people just kept talking about it.
Was your initial reaction that something must have happened and he would be going to jail?
Sure, yeah.
Does that mean that your initial reaction to what you heard on the news anyway was that George Zimmerman had done something wrong?
I guess, yeah.
Did you ever change your mind on that?
I don't know anything about the case, so I don't really know if he is in the wrong or if he isn't. That's what
Fair enough, that's what I'm saying. We're just trying to figure out what the impressions were and what, if any, effect it might have. So, if I understand correctly, your initial impression was it was very sad that Trayvon Martin died.
Right.
And that your impression was that George Zimmerman had probably done something wrong.
Right.
In conversations with your mother or hearing more about it, did you ever change your mind on that?
Not really, because I never really stopped to think about it and go over anything to really form an opinion about the case or what was going on.
But is that, all other things aside, based upon what you know from the news and such, is that how you still feel?
Objection, ask and answer.
She can answer this question. Go ahead and answer.
I guess I don't really know much about the case nor care.
Of course. You could never know more about the case than you know.
Right.
Okay, so based upon what you know, that's still how you feel.
Right.
Once you got here and you were told, hey, don't talk about it,
Right.
and you haven't,
Right.
should I assume that you didn't attend any of the walks or marches?
No, I didn't.
Or did you ever visit the memorial site
No, I
or
didn't.
attend any service or anything?
No.
In any of the information on the case, however limited, did you ever hear or see any press conferences involving anyone connected with the case, such as the
No.
Martin family, the prosecutor, lawyers for anybody involved?
No.
Did your mom ever talk with you about that?
No.
Did your mom ever say that that she supported the
No.
Trayvon Martin side of things by giving money or by signing a petition or by doing something that would show her support for one side or the other?
No.
May I have just a second, Judge? Sorry.
That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you'll remain seated for just a moment, and counsel will approach when you're ready. If you'll please follow Corporal Debs outside the courtroom, and please bring in the next juror.
Your Honor, I-24 is present.
Please be seated. Good afternoon. You will continue to be known as juror I-24. The attorneys are going to ask you some questions about the questionnaire you filled out last Tuesday, and we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda. You may proceed.
Can you please support? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
As Judge Nelson indicated, we're going to refer to you either as ma'am or I-24. I hope that's all right.
That's fine.
This part of the jury process is where we're trying to find out what witnesses, or I'm sorry, what jurors' exposure has been to the media. So I'm going to ask you some about that and whether that would in any way cause you to favor one side or the other. We start off by stating that you have answered a question that you have not formed an opinion as to the defendant's guilt or innocence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also stated that please briefly write out what you had heard, and you were very brief, you said TV, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you I'm going to try to develop that a little bit more in terms of what you remember.
Okay.
But your source of information from this case is from TV?
Yes,
Okay. And would that have been both from local and national?
mostly local.
Okay. Do you recall what particular station you may have heard most of the knowledge you have about this case from?
A little bit of all of them, but
Okay.
probably Fox.
And your knowledge of this case, was it obtained at the very beginning when this occurred back last year? It happened back in February 26th of 2012. Would it have been around that time? And has it continued throughout is what I'm trying to ask.
Probably in the beginning, maybe a little bit later, and then I just kind of tuned out.
Okay, so let me, if I could, kind of expand on that a little bit, have you elaborate a little bit more about that. You would have paid close attention, I guess, or attention when it first happened?
I don't know as so much attention as just to see what was going on.
Sure, okay. Are you one of those TV watchers or news watchers where you're probably real religious in terms of watching TV every night or in the morning, in terms of the news?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have time for reading newspapers.
Okay. So you kind of get the lowdown from what they tell you on TV?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, all right. And what do you recall in terms of what occurred here? Do you recall, if you can just kind of tell me what you remember?
That a young man was shot and killed.
Okay,
That it was in a subdivision.
okay,
That it was somebody who was patrolling that subdivision.
okay. Anything else?
Primarily to begin with that.
Okay, all right. And then I gather, since you live in this community, if it appeared again, you would have watched it, I guess, when it happened, in terms of whatever other news follow-up there were related to the case?
When I had time.
When you had time, not, you were one of those that was, anytime you had to you had to be home at a certain time in order to watch it?
No, I work.
Okay. And just for purposes of your understanding, we know where you work, you put it down here, so you don't have to tell us again. Did you keep up with any of the court proceedings in terms of what was going on in the case?
No.
Okay. Do you recall, in terms of your information that you obtained from the media, whether you had come across of any photographs related to this case that you would have seen on TV?
No.
Okay.
I did, excuse me.
Okay, that's all right.
Only in the beginning where they had said that the young man had been shot and that Mr. Zimmerman had not been injured in any way, and then later on they showed his injuries, that he
Okay.
did sustain some injuries.
Okay. So at the beginning, you Did you say you looked at photographs that show he did not have no injuries, or they said he didn't have no
They
injuries?
said that he had no injuries.
And that would have been a commentator, I gather, on TV?
The news, the media.
Okay, somebody in the news?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you said subsequent to that, something about injuries that he had sustained?
Yeah, that he had. And I did see a picture of his face, that he had a bruise on his head and some bruises on his face.
Okay. So bruise on his head, do you remember what part of the head?
I believe it was on the back of his head.
Okay.
And then somewhere on, like, his nose or
Sure,
whatever.
okay, all right. And did you say that was recently?
No,
Okay.
that
When
was a
was
while
that?
back.
How
That was a
long ago
while
was that?
back.
You talking about last year?
Probably last year, the beginning of this year.
Okay. Did you form an impression as a result of that?
Yeah, that the media makes a lot of stories for
Okay.
a good story.
Okay. Let's see if we can start off with a premise. Do you believe everything you see in the media, either
No.
photographs or commentary or whatever else you would have seen?
No,
Okay. Do you understand under the law, for people to serve as jurors, they have to agree to set aside whatever they've seen on TV and only make your decision on what actually happens in the courtroom?
yes,
Do you agree with that principle?
definitely.
Okay. Can you agree that you would apply that principle to your actions as a juror in this case?
Yes,
Okay. And the reason we asked is that, and the reason we're inquiring now is to kind of get an idea of what you've seen. And then obviously the end result is, can you agree to set that aside? And then if you agree to set aside, as we're discussing now, if by chance you're serving as a juror and then something pops up in your mind that you remember seeing on TV or somebody talking about it, whether that would influence you in another way, in any way in arriving at your decision, you believe it would not?
no, it would
Okay.
not.
All right, let's talk, if we can, more about the exposure you would have had from TV. Do you recall any kind of recordings related to this case? Anything that you would have heard? And I'm not saying that there is, I can't tell you, okay, there's
No.
recording 1, 2, and 3, or there was a blue car, I can't feed you information, I'm not saying
No.
that there is. You don't recall any kind of recording or anything like that? Anything regarding if there was a videotape of any type? Do you recall any about that?
No,
Okay. Do you recall any commentary in terms of, or actual events that happened in the courtroom where there would have been filming of some kind of story about this is what happened in courtroom today, you know, on May whatever, this is what happened, or last November, et cetera?
no, I don't have time for,
Okay, all right. Did you discuss the matter with any friends or family? When I say the matter, the case or any aspects of the case?
well, I mean, we did have some people at work discuss
Sure,
about it.
okay, okay. And did the people at work provide you any more insight in terms of what they had seen on TV or what they read in the newspaper or whatever they did?
No, just their feelings of
Okay.
if they felt that
Right.
Mr. Zimmerman was innocent or guilty.
Okay, and if you can, how many people did you talk to about? Was it just a few, or was it, I know where you work, so you don't have to tell me who, but I'm just saying, were there a
Well, I
bunch of
work in
people?
I work in a small office, so I would
Okay.
say maybe 2 or 3 people,
Okay.
4.
Sure, and were they all in agreement as to the guilt or innocence of this defendant, or did they all take one side or the other?
Most of them took one side,
Okay, and which side did they take?
guilty.
I'm sorry.
Guilty.
Okay, all right. And did you argue with them as to whether he was guilty or not?
No, I just told them that there's probably a lot that they don't know about this case and they're just jumping to conclusions.
Sure, okay. And you still believe that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you have not formulated an opinion as to the guilt or innocence of?
No, sir, I have
Okay.
not.
All right. When these co-workers were telling you that they felt Mr. Zimmerman was guilty, did they in some way tell you why they thought he was guilty, in other words? Or did they just say guilty? Or did they say he's guilty because of A, B, C?
No, primarily when it came on TV, they would say, he's got to be guilty. That's about it. We didn't have time to get into it.
Was it, did you all see it on TV? Or is it just people telling you what they had seen on TV at home? Or
No, we have a television in our office
okay.
and
And so-
occasionally.
Sure, okay. And I'm not
We
saying that you're not
rarely
working.
had it on, but occasionally.
I am not implying in any way that you weren't working. I'm talking about occasionally, people at work, sometimes the TV comes on or something, and you kind of glance at it.
Yes.
Okay. And discussions, when that happened, every once in a while, did people would say, oh, he's guilty, and you kind of kept quiet, or you didn't express an opinion, or just other than we need to keep an open mind, or how did you?
I just told them that what I felt, which was that they just did not know the whole story, and they were jumping to conclusions before they knew all of the facts.
Sure. Okay.
And then I never gave my opinion.
Sure. Okay. Now, these individuals at work, the 2 or 3 individuals that expressed their opinion, did they say something besides the word guilty? I guess what I'm saying is that they say he's guilty because of?
No.
Okay, at all, they just, okay. How about at home, family or anything like that, any discussions with family members about whether, what they had heard or seen on TV?
No.
Okay, and was that on purpose, or you just don't discuss it with family, or nobody discussed it?
I mean, we watched it,
Okay.
you listen to the news, and,
Okay,
I mean, it's like when you watch a movie. You
Sure.
watch the movie, you say, I enjoyed it, and
okay,
that's about it.
sure, okay. Did you do any kind of, or do you partake in Facebook or any of the social media?
No.
Okay,
No, I don't, I'm
okay.
not very good at getting into
Sure.
that.
Okay, so you did not do any research about this case, or
No.
look out there and see what was out there in the web's field in terms of what commentary there was?
Well, my children are the ones that get me on Facebook once in a blue moon. Otherwise,
Okay.
I doubt I'd find it.
Did any of your kids tell you anything about their opinions about the case, or, Mom, let me tell you what came out in the news today, or what I saw on Facebook today, or whatever?
No, they're too interested in their own lives.
Okay. If you weren't on a jury and you had a close friend who you hadn't seen in 5 years, and they decided to say, hey, can I come visit you, where you live? You said, sure. And they came to town, and you weren't on the jury.
I was not on the
And
jury.
you were not on the jury, so
Okay.
you would be allowed to talk about it.
Okay.
So you're not violating the court's law instruction about not talking about it, so you weren't on the jury, assume this. And your friend said, what's going on here? What is this case all about? What would you tell them?
I would probably tell them that a young man lost his life, and another man is fighting for his life.
Okay. And if they were to ask you as follow-up, as a good friend might ask you, well, what do you mean? What happened? What would you tell them?
I would tell them the little I know, and that's that Mr. Zimmerman shot a young man in what the media has said in defense of his life.
Okay. Now, in terms of what you would tell them in terms of defense of his life, is that based on what the media has said, or what you've heard? I guess you've heard that
A
on the
little
media?
bit of both, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And what if specifically have you heard on the media that this was in defense of his life?
I guess that Trayvon Martin was in his neighborhood.
Okay. And I'm not trying to get you to guess, I'm just trying to get you to remember.
No,
as
just
best-
that he was in his neighborhood, and I guess some incident caused him to
Okay.
feel that he needed to defend himself.
Okay. Anything more about what happened in terms of the details of how Mr. Martin was killed?
He was shot.
Okay. Anything about how the shooting occurred? What led up to the shooting?
I don't think they really went into that, other
And-
than.
and if you don't know, I'm
He
just-
was in the neighborhood,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I guess Mr. Zimmerman thought it was suspicious.
Okay. And is that just you kind of assuming right now, or is that what the media said?
Somewhat of what the media says.
Okay. And see, what I'm trying to do is get in here in terms of what you remember in some way, hopefully asking you some questions to kind of get you to think back. Anything else you can remember about that Mr. Zimmerman thought he was suspicious? Anything more related to that?
No.
Anything more about the circumstances surrounding that? What happened or anything like that? Okay. Do you recall any other events going on in the community related to this case at all? Either at the time it happened, shortly thereafter, or now? And I'm not saying that there was, I'm just saying what you remember, if there was anything going on that was covered in the media in any way related to this case?
No. No, I don't think I quite understand what you're saying.
I'm trying to
Is
be
it something that when it happened, or
Right,
something in
yeah,
the
right.
vicinity of
Sure,
where it
well-
happened? I do know that the young man had gone to the store
Okay,
to get a drink, and
okay.
that's,
Yeah, and what happens in this process, legally, the attorneys from either side cannot like feed you information and say, and this is hypothetical, this is really to happen. There was a blue car. Did you understand that there was a blue car? And you go, no. Well, now I've told you that there was a blue car. You understand? I'm not allowed to give you information and then say, oh, now that you've heard it, can you be fair?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to ask you what you know, and hopefully I'm asking you in a way that it prods your mind in terms of your memory, in terms of what you remember. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That might be why some of the questions are, you're not understanding what I'm asking, because I'm trying to, as best I can, without telling you the answer, getting you to tell me what you remember. Do you
yeah,
understand?
I do.
Okay. You mentioned that you heard that the young man had gone to the store. Do you remember what store it was or anything?
No.
Okay. Anything else that you can remember related to what happened that when Mr. Martin was shot?
Primarily that it was something of a neighborhood watch.
Okay. And you gathered that from the media. And who was involved in the neighborhood watch? Do you recall what the
No,
media said?
no. Just that Mr. Zimmerman was involved in like a neighborhood watch.
Okay. Anything else, other aspect of that you recall? Okay. And if you don't remember, that's fine. Now, anything aside from when it happened, anything in terms of the community, any discussions that you recall in the community, anybody having discussions about, or any kind of commentary about that in the community at all, in Seminole County, related to what had happened?
Other than his parents?
Okay, tell me about that, what you remember.
Well, they were pretty upset. Any parent would be. I
Okay.
cannot imagine
Sure.
losing
Okay.
my child.
Okay. And so the parents were upset.
Mhm.
Anything else you can recall about that? Okay. Did you think that was inappropriate that the parents were upset? Did that sway you one way or the other?
No.
Okay.
Any parent would feel that way. If you lose your child, well, I cannot imagine.
Okay. And do you understand under the law that you can only make your decision on what happens in the courtroom? Can you
Yes.
agree with that?
Yes,
So
sir.
you can disregard that in terms of the parents that have lost one? In other words, that you just have to focus on what actually happens in the courtroom? The
Yes.
evidence? Can you agree to abide by that?
Yes.
Okay. As you were hearing stuff, did you formulate opinions one way or the other, or were you trying, or tell me what you were doing when you were hearing stuff?
Just listening to what was going on.
So-
Like any news, I mean, you listen and see
Sure.
what's going on.
So you on purpose would, or that's just your nature, you were keeping an open mind?
I enjoy the news. I enjoy seeing what's going on in the community,
Sure.
around the world, and you can ask my coworkers. I enjoy listening halfway
Right.
to the
And
news.
you would agree that the media, as you stated already, I believe, doesn't always get it right, in terms
Oh,
of
they
facts?
don't.
They don't, okay, I didn't want to. And then the other thing is that sometimes the media doesn't just tell you the story, but sometimes there's commentary about that too. In other words, sometimes people are referred to as talking heads or experts or other people commenting about what that means and what that doesn't mean.
And what sells?
Pardon me?
And what
And what
sells?
sells. Do you remember any commentary by people on the news about the case in terms of what this means, whether this means this or this means that?
No.
Okay. I gather in your response to the question, oh, I apologize, you mentioned something about Mr. Martin's parents saying something on the news or something about that. And you agree that you cannot consider that at all in your decision. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Want to make sure. And any other aspect of what you've told us right now, you agree that you have to leave that outside the courtroom, what you've
Yes.
seen in the media. You also mentioned that in answering one of the questions that we realize people take time from their everyday lives and jobs, there's stuff going on with family and friends and at work too, and we realize it's a sacrifice to come and serve as a juror. We realize that people make a sacrifice. But that's the only way our system works. You know, we ask people to come from their everyday lives. My point in asking you that is, as established in the context of what I'm going to ask you next, you answered the question that this would not be an insurmountable hardship. Is that correct?
No, my children are all grown.
Okay, all right. And my point is, we have now decided, or we estimate as best we can on both sides, that we think the jury trial itself, once we pick the trial, will probably be anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And the court has also made a determination, because the court wants to ensure that the verdict is from the jury as opposed to influences from the media or other aspects of it, in terms of the media influence you, that you will be sequestered. Do you understand that?
Yes.
As part of the process. And we realize most people do not get overly excited about that, but that's part of what we all have to do. You agree, and you can do that. Is that correct? Well,
Yes,
I'm not trying to get you to say one
I
thing.
can do it. Do I
Okay.
want, would I prefer to be sequestered? No, but
I
yes,
think
I
that's the
can.
answer that everybody would give. You're human, but you understand that, and my point is, it's not an insurmountable hardship. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. You mentioned that something about that at some point when you were telling me about what you had heard, that thought he was suspicious, I think you said, right? That Mr. Zimmerman thought somebody was suspicious?
Mm-hmm.
And is that based on what the media said? Or is
Yes.
that- Okay. And something about the defense of his life, that's also from the media, or is that your
Mhm.
own statement
Yes.
about that? Is that from the media?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, sometimes when we speak, we've heard something in the media, and then we kind of interject our kind of thoughts or opinions as we mention about that. Everything you've told us in terms of from the media, is that basically from the media as opposed to you?
Yes.
You have not interjected your opinion in your answers to my questions?
No.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Malley?
Yes, good afternoon. Afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. My name's Mark O'Mara. I represent George Zimmerman in the middle. Don West is my co-counsel, Robert Herschel, in helping out. Do you have a feel for why you're here and what we're doing at this part of the stage of the proceedings?
Yes, you want to make sure that Mr. Zimmerman has a fair trial.
Perfect. And that whatever you know about the case, we sort of find out a little bit about it so that we can drill into it, make sure that to the extent that you have those opinions, that we can agree to set them aside. So it may take a few minutes to do just that. One question, and then I could sit down, is can you leave everything outside the courtroom and only listen to what comes from the witness stand? And
Yes.
presumably you would say yes, and I could sit down, but I'm not going to, at least for a few more minutes. Because I want to look into it a little bit more if I can.
Sure.
And just make sure that we've found out what you know. And I've heard that obviously you're quite interested in the news. It's sort of a almost hobby, if not just a true interest of yours, to keep up on current events.
Mm-hmm.
And that you've not actively kept up on this, but as it's shown itself in the media, you've watched it. Is that accurate?
I have, but it got tiring after a while
Mhm.
when one day they say one thing and then they say another, and
Okay. And that I think you said that it began sort of with a surge early on in the matter when the case first happened. Is
Mhm.
that correct?
yes.
And when you do answer me, as you did Mr. Deleonder, I can understand what you're saying, but if you can, I might remind you along the way for yes or no's, because that's what the court reporter has to take down. Okay?
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. One of the things that you mentioned I want to ask about as an example of a concern, just a systemic concern that we have. You mentioned that you had heard, I think you said a young man was shot and killed in a subdivision by somebody who was patrolling the subdivision. Was that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's sort of just something, a little factoid that you heard about at some point in the past?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If, however, you came to the court, you were on the jury, you listened to all the evidence, you heard it under oath from the witness stand, and there was no evidence that suggested that Mrs. Zimmerman was patrolling the neighborhood, what would you rely on? Your memory that you thought you heard from the media, or the presentation here in the courtroom?
I would say the presentation here in the courtroom.
Any concern with, to the extent that your memory conflicts with what you hear in the courtroom, any concern with setting aside those factoids of that memory that you had from outside the courtroom?
The thing we have to remember, and that I like to think that I will remember, is that what the media reports is what they first hear, what comes to them right away. Sometimes, you know, they don't take the time to research and look into it and really report the facts. You know, it sells. And unfortunately, sometimes the media does a great disservice to the people by just reporting whatever.
Have you evidenced in your knowledge and view of the news that sometimes the media rushes to judgment or simply presents it in a way that might look sensational, sell news, but sacrifices accuracy?
Yes.
Is that a concern or a filter that you have, that you look at the media through generally?
I just think it's sad, because I think it does a disservice to people who are fighting for their lives. You know, a lot of times the public gets a bad impression or gets the wrong information. And then sometimes the media apologizes for their errors, but the damage is done.
Mm-hmm. How has that shown itself to you in this case?
Well, in the beginning, they came out with that the young man, my impression was that he was the innocent person. And now they're reporting other things, some of the things that he did in school, that he wasn't the innocent young man that they had initially portrayed. He's a teenager. He's a 17-year-old kid. I mean, no child is perfect. But it seems like they're pulling from both ends.
And you think that the media has, I don't want to put words in your mouth, somewhat of their own agenda in bringing it out in different ways?
Yeah, so it sells. They can lengthen the story.
That was one example. Can you give me others of how that's shown itself in this case to you? The
No.
early sort of suggesting.
Well, it was like when they initially reported that Mr. Zimmerman had no injuries, and then a week or so later, he did. So what do you believe? I mean, you listen to the story, but that's just it. You listen to the story, but I personally have seen too many stories where the beginning and the end are so different.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I just want to make sure, as I said when I began, that whatever you may have heard in the media, as one-sided or incomplete as it may have been, that you're not going to default to that in assisting you to make a decision here on this case.
No, sir, I'm not.
So that if you don't hear it from the witness stand, will you agree not to consider it?
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned that on occasion you get to view the case, or at least you get to view the news. And sometimes that might include snippets about the case while you're at your job.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those. We just have to say yes or no.
Yeah,
so
oh,
she
I'm so
gets it.
sorry, yes.
That's okay. That's all right. In the same sense, you listen to the radio sometimes at work?
No,
Okay. How about in the car ride back and forth to work?
sometimes.
All right. And would that also be a similar sort of whatever the media brings to you through the radio, you'll listen to, but will also filter through what we've just talked about?
Just listening,
Okay.
really. Something to occupy your mind.
Okay. And do you listen to the news or watch the news in the morning before work?
No,
No?
don't have time.
Okay. And how about in the afternoon, after work, or when you're home at night?
After work, sometimes,
All
in
right.
between cooking dinner,
All right. So maybe some background noise in that sense as well.
a lot of times, yes.
And one of your default or go-to stations is Fox,
One of them, yeah. Mhm.
and some others?
Oh, yeah, ABC, NBC, CNN.
We've talked about the media in general and some of their biases or the way they focus it. Have you seen individual stations or networks have a bias to them individually, like Fox versus MSNBC or CNN or anything?
No.
Okay. If I truly asked you to put a number on it, and I'm not going to ask about individuals past this question, but if I had to ask how many times you had an input into you, be it from friends or family, the media itself, that had something to do with the George Zimmerman case, and you had to give me an estimate, what would it be?
In great length, none.
Okay.
In passing, 2 or 3 maybe?
And a similar question to what Mr. De Leon asked you, but if I asked you for the 3 most significant parts of this case, and just those things that stick out in your mind about the case today, not just when it first came out, but now that you've sort of had the exposure to the media in the past 14, 15 months, if I asked you today the top 3 most significant issues about this case, what would they be?
A young man lost his life, another man is fighting for his life, and no one is a winner in this case.
Are you aware, based upon the media exposure, of some of the social or political or cultural pressures that have been placed upon this case?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
That Trayvon Martin is African American. I believe Mr. Zimmerman is Puerto Rican.
I'm not supposed to give facts
I'm
right
not
now, so
sure.
whatever it is that you
I'm not positive.
proceed. Okay.
So that in itself is a conflict,
Okay.
or it can be.
All right. To the extent that you believe that those pressures exist, do you think that they would affect your ability to decide this case on the facts and the evidence as opposed to those pressures which, of course, are outside the courtroom and not inside the courtroom?
No.
Would it affect your ability to come back with a verdict, regardless of what it is and regardless of the impact it might have on those factions who have political or cultural beliefs in this regard?
No.
I might just have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you for your time. Ma'am.
If you'll remain seated for just one moment, counsel, please approach when you're ready. Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute recess, so court will be in recess.